Hansen took a vial of the bear's blood with him, in case he needed it later for the hunt. The first thing he found was a tank ant nest. Hansen did not use much blood, so it was only enough to attract a few ants. This was exactly what he desired, and after the ants had arrived at the dead bug, Hansen loosed an arrow at one of the suckers. The flaming arrow tore right through the body of the targeted tank ant. Mutant creature hunted tank ant killed. No beast soul gained. Consume its flesh to gain 0 to 10 mutant geno points randomly. Hansen did not decide to hunt these tank ants because they could provide him with decent beast souls. He hunted them because of their nature. They always lived together, and what's more, most of the ants inside that particular anthill were mutant class. They were so small, Hansen would be able to eat them quickly and increase his mutant geno point tally at a rapid pace. The tank ants were very dumb too. Even if the ants ahead of them had been killed, they fearlessly continued their single-file march. Hansen was overjoyed, being able to kill them in such a hassle-free manner. It was an easy task overall, and their mindlessness made it a simple affair. As Hansen ate, though, he felt something was amiss. He was unnerved, and so he turned to scan the environment around him. Then, he caught sight of two red eyes staring at him from a nearby bush. Quickly, he became alert. With his skills and experience, Hansen should have known something was watching him far sooner. Whatever was watching him, it wasn't any old creature. As the bushes rustled, a white shadow leapt out. Hansen was frozen. From the red eyes, he believed a horrid monster had been watching him. But that wasn't the case at all. All that emerged was a white rabbit. Aside from its ruby eyes, it mostly looked like an ordinary rabbit. Hansen could tell that it was a mutant creature. How many gene locks it had opened, however, he hadn't a clue. It opened its mouth and began gnawing and nibbling on whatever it could get. Hansen then thought to himself, "How dare you eat my meat?" And on that note, when in the sanctuaries did rabbits decide to start eating meat? And you're only a lowly mutant creature, how dare you? The rabbit's actions infuriated Hansen, and he quickly turned his fist into a fiery phoenix. Without delay, he swung it towards the mischievous critter. The rabbit seemed to have an aura of protection around it, like a crystal casing that was invisible to the naked eye. When the phoenix flame came into contact with it, the fire spread out everywhere, all along the orbish aura. Not a single hair of the rabbit was singed. Survival of the fittest was the #1 rule when it came to life in the sanctuaries. The rabbit was clearly the fitter one between them, so there was nothing Hansen could do to prevent it from taking his food. Hansen decided to walk the perimeter and scope out whether or not there were other creatures nearby. After traveling briefly, he stumbled across a canyon. He was at the top, and when he leaned over to take a peek, he saw many more red-eye rabbits. Why are there so many of them? If all of them were sacred blood class, the power they'd have was sure to be insane. Using his Dongxuan aura, though, he was able to determine that they weren't sacred blood creatures. In fact, they were quite weak. They must have been the weakest critters Hansen had ever seen during his time in the Third God Sanctuary. Exiting the valley, he proceeded to ascend the slopes of a mountain. There, Hansen stumbled across a mutant creature he could hunt. From a cliffside wall hung a large beehive. The occupants of the hive were bigger than average bees, approximately the size of pigeons. Hansen drew his bow, nocked an arrow, pulled the string, and readied himself to fire an arrow at any mutant ones that appeared. They were quick little blighters, and their eyesight was good. Hitting them from such a distance was no small feat. Mutant creature saber-toothed bee killed. The beast soul has been acquired. Consume its flesh to gain 0 to 10 mutant geno points randomly. Hansen was delighted to receive a beast soul on the first kill. Without waiting, he took a look at its features. The beast soul turned out to be an arrow type. I can finally replace the arrows I've been using. Hansen hadn't been impressed with the power of his flaming arrow for a long time, so he was pleasantly surprised to find a mutant beast soul replacement. Hansen left the mountainsides on which he had hunted the bees, and then decided to have a cookout with his latest kills. The taste of the saber-toothed bees was different than the taste of the tank ants. The flavors were very wild and unappetizing, so Hansen had to spruce the taste up himself. Hansen munched and crunched his way through the bees he had harvested. But then, Hansen suddenly saw a white shadow emerge from the bushes. It wasted no time in destroying Hansen's enjoyment of the moment by grabbing one of the bees he had been cooking. Hansen watched the Rabbit King nibble on the bees he had hunted himself. "Fuck you, how dare you come back and steal my food again?" Seeing the rabbit gnaw the well-seasoned bees, Hansen had an idea. Hansen watched the rabbit and smiled menacingly. Although it surely tasted divine, Hansen had left one of the bees' poison sacs inside. This poison could numb and paralyze the tongue, but with the spices he had used, Hansen was sure the rabbit wouldn't be able to detect what it was eating. He didn't expect it to actually kill the rabbit, but making it sick would be enough for him. Hansen continued to watch the rabbit, anticipating the moment it'd fall under the effect of the poison. After a few more mouthfuls, the rabbit suddenly froze in place. A white substance frothed from its mouth, before it collapsed to the ground and began convulsing. Hansen watched with a captivated stare. His ploy had been more effective than he believed it would be, and he was pleasantly surprised at how low the rabbit's resistance to poison was. Is this really a sacred blood creature? Hansen ran over to the rabbit and watched its life force begin to fade while its body twitched in agony. How can a creature with 7 gene locks open be so weak? How can such a weak creature possess the fitness level required to be a sacred blood creature? The rabbit was dying, but before it completely gave up the ghost, Hansen decided to be merciful. The rabbit was no longer poisoned. After he moved away from it, the rabbit ran around in what appeared to be happiness. It was not afraid of Hansen, and it didn't behave like any creature of prey he had seen before. Still curious about its nature, Hansen tried to follow it. Eventually, it reached the canyon that was populated by other rabbits and entered a burrow. A little past the entrance, the tunnel expanded further and became quite wide. The Rabbit King didn't stop in that cave, and it zigzagged along through a variety of different passages. Hansen had to speed up in his pursuit of it, in fear of losing the creature. After a while, they came to an underground river. The Rabbit King leapt into the water, the shield allowed it to float atop the babbling river, and the rabbit submitted itself to the gentle pull of the current. When Hansen saw the Rabbit King next, many splashing sounds accompanied the sight. After the Rabbit King descended the waterfall into a subterranean lake, a silver-scaled aqua dragon lashed upwards. It was attempting to kill the Rabbit King. It seemed as if the Rabbit King was going to be eaten with relative ease, but it managed to kick itself off a cliff wall and leap past the water serpent. The dragon turned around and continued chasing the rabbit, but the aqua dragon had black chains around its arms. The chains quickly jerked the dragon to a stop and allowed the Rabbit King to get to safety. Boom! The aqua dragon's body fell, creating 10-meter-high waves. The Rabbit King was still in the water, but it was no longer in danger. Hansen was frozen, acknowledging the power the dragon possessed. It was almost as strong as a super creature, that much he knew for certain. The biggest question on his mind, though, was how someone had managed to chain up such a fierce beast so far below the earth. And furthermore, why? Was it a human that did this, or was it a spirit? The chains did not look as if they had been forged by humans, but ultimately, Hansen could not be sure. After one last quick inspection of the aqua dragon, Hansen returned to following the rabbit before he lost it. Eventually, the river started to slow down, and this was when the rabbit disembarked from the current. It leapt out of the water. Now, the Rabbit King followed the rocks. Before long, it came to another passage. It was a cave. Hansen did not waste any time, and so he flew over to the stone cave the rabbit had come to. The cave was only a few meters deep, and Hansen was shocked when he saw what lay inside. A plum tree stood in the center, and it was 4 meters tall. It extended to brush the ceiling of the room. Strangely, there was fruit upon its branches, but no blossoming flowers. The fruits were about the size of an egg, and they were purple and red in color. The red-eye rabbit jumped and grabbed one of the tree's fruit. It swallowed it in one gulp, and immediately after doing so, started to roll on the floor as if it was suffering. Not long after, it calmed down. It looked weaker than it had before, and its life force was faint, but slowly it began to return to normal. What is this plant, and who planted it here? Hansen was surprised at where he ended up, and he observed his surroundings with keen interest. If this was what enabled the rabbit to open its 7th gene lock, then it could have very well been a super geno plant. Hansen, wanting to try it, grabbed one of the fruits and took a bite. He felt the delicious juices roll into his belly. After eating the fruit, Hansen felt as if his innards were getting sliced by some phantom knife. He fell to the ground, sweating. The pain did not immediately relent. It continued to increase and became so intense that he ended up screaming aloud. Hansen was surprised that this fruit was able to increase his self-geno points. Looking up at the tree, it delighted Hansen to see that there were around 100 of the fruit. Hansen was now glad to see that the rabbit was still incredibly weak. It took a while to digest the fruit. If it was still hungry and back to being spry, it'd take all the fruit before Hansen could. Hansen saw that a lot of the fruit had already been eaten, and he wasn't sure how much had been taken. Using his holy light, Hansen was able to fully recover and get back on his feet. When he was upright, he wasted no time in gobbling up another. The pain was just as bad as it was the previous time. No pain, no gain, literally. And Hansen could not wait to eat more. After eating the fruit, he healed himself, and when he was recovered, he'd immediately eat another fruit. This happened over and over, and suddenly, pain had become his pleasure. The tree still had over 100 fruit, and when he had eaten 100 of them, Hansen heard a strange announcement play. Super King Spirit Gene capacity at maximum, 1st gene lock open. Hansen was more than shocked, to say the least. He already knew opening his gene locks improved his Super King Spirit mode, but he had no idea Super King Spirit mode had its own gene locks to open. Although he wished to know what changes there were following the opening of its first gene lock, he had no idea where he was. He wasn't going to randomly use it here. I'm sorry, rabbit, but fair's fair. You eat my stuff, I eat your stuff. Hansen left the rabbit there for a while and went towards the door. He had already received a most amazing treasure in the room he was in. The thought of there being something even better further in excited him a great deal. Humans were both greedy and curious things, so Hansen wasn't going to leave without searching this place in full. In the back of this palace-like room, there was a bronze tripod ding cauldron. It was 10 meters tall, and it possessed similar imagery as well. Hansen flew over there, curious about what might be inside the ding, and after seeing what was there, goosebumps rose up and down his body. There was red soil inside the bronze ding. It smelled like blood, and someone had been buried beneath it. The head and the hair of a man was all that was left uncovered by the soil. Hansen could not tell whether it was a human or a spirit. He couldn't detect a life force, but it was so curious and unnerving to think a person had been buried there, so far underground, inside a ding. Hansen gulped as he was getting rather creeped out. When he regathered his composure, he sought to check the man out and see if he could learn more. Hansen flew away from the ding and saw a folding screen. Moving past it, his eyes were greeted with the sight of a stone hall. In there, Hansen noted the presence of several stone statues. They were all demonic-looking in their imagery. Towards the end was a stone table, and atop it a gray box. Hansen approached it and noticed it was open. Much to his surprise, he realized that it was actually a Rubik's Cube that had been crafted from bone. This wasn't an average Rubik's Cube, though. It was six-sided, and none of its surfaces were color-coded. In place of colors, there were many symbols that were foreign to Hansen. After a thorough count, he learned there were 100 faces for the Rubik's Cube. Creating a Rubik's Cube that was so small, yet so dense and complex, was not something of average craft. It would require the precision of high technological advancements and machinery. Thinking it quite interesting, Hansen wanted to keep it. Hansen decided to leave the stone hall, and just as he was to pass the screen, he was delivered a fright. Standing atop that screen was the man he had previously seen buried inside the ding. He was staring at Hansen. "Are you a man, or are you a spirit?" Hansen eyed the man suspiciously as he drew his blood dagger. The man did not answer. He reached out his hand towards Hansen's neck with a sudden burst of speed. When his blade collided with the man's skin, it sounded as if Hansen had just struck metal. The dagger bounced off the man's hand, and with a sudden reversal of power, Hansen was sent flying backwards into the stone walls of the hall. The white-eyed man sought to attack Hansen again before he could recover, so Hansen summoned his dragon blood snake to defend him. The white-eyed man created a hole directly through the dragon blood snake. The creature squealed in pain. Fortunately, it was a strong and powerful beast soul. It was able to withstand the hit, and it'd take more than that to bring it down. The man closed the distance between them with an attack of his own, and Hansen was too late to dodge it. The flesh of his shoulder was torn, and the gash instantly wept blood. "Who are you?" Hansen asked again. Against this enemy, Dragon Blood Snake was all but useless, and even if he employed his Super King Spirit mode, Hansen wagered he'd still be weaker than the man. Realizing he could not beat this foe, all Hansen wanted to do now was escape. The landscape and its winding tunnels were maze-like this far below the earth. If he was quick enough, there was a chance he could lose the man. But that was a big if. Gritting his teeth, Hansen used his red dagger in an attempt to knock the hand away. But this time, the man's hand suddenly opened to grab the red blade. And then, in a flash, it was broken in a swift clench. But the man's hand did not stop there. It still came toward Hansen, and the attack was not absorbed by the sacred blood armor he wore. The wretched nails of Hansen's foe were sharper than any blade. Hansen had no choice but to now pull out his Taya sword. He hadn't used it earlier, in fear of it being broken. That belief had not changed, but it was the best blade he currently had. It was a desperate time, and Hansen could not afford to be careful. He would do whatever it took to survive, so with Taya in hand, Hansen swung it against the man's incoming hand. Hansen and the sword were sent flying, but strangely, the man let out a yelp. He shouted aloud in pain, and Hansen noticed a wound across his hand. And from the gash Hansen had delivered, the man bled purple. Taya has what it takes to hurt him. The man stopped moving and looked on the sword with great fear. Hansen was happy and renewed with hope following this development. Hansen fell back to the tree, but the red-eye rabbit had vanished. The man, seeing his tree stripped bare, looked furious. No longer did he care about the sword Hansen possessed, as a blazing bonfire of anger surrounded him in a frightful aura. The cavern seemed to tremble with his rage. Hey, it wasn't just me. The rabbit had some too. Hansen kept on running, summoning his dragon blood snake to follow from behind. When Hansen made it out of the tree hall, Hansen heard the dragon blood snake cry out behind him. Turning back to take a look, it seemed grievously injured. Hansen couldn't dwell on it too much, though. He summoned it back and cast arrow to glide upstream. But before he could put space between himself and the man, Hansen found him approaching at a rapid pace and closing the gap. Hansen waved his Taya madly. But the man was like the master of all, and he was obviously prepared for this. He evaded the sword and threw his palm at Hansen's chest. Spilling blood from his mouth, Hansen lost control of his flight and went careening into the river. A huge splash accompanied his crash into the stream. Holding strong against the pain threatened to drown him, Hansen dove deeper into the water, trying to escape the evil thing that hounded him. It was a deep stream, 10 meters at least. But as Hansen kept swimming, he suddenly caught sight of a pale face with black hair swirling around it. It was like the frightening appearance of an underwater demon. "You can even beat me when it comes to swimming." Han Sen was angered by his opponent. Realizing flight was still pointless, he decided to attack with Taya again. He dodged Han Sen's sword strike, spun, and had his arm outstretched. He was inches away from palming Han Sen's chest. Figuring it was a now or never moment, Han Sen burst with a bright white light. His eyes and hair shone like white gold, signaling his transformation into a super king spirit. His power and speed increased, and an endless font of energy sprung up inside his body to fuel his limbs. Han Sen did not dodge the incoming attack. He merely reoriented his Taya sword to strike the man's chest. Both of them bled. The man groaned and fell back into the black waters. "I'll be back," the man said as he ran. But Han Sen did not chase him. He decided to turn the opposite way and flee while he had the chance. Even if he managed to catch up with the man in black, his Super King Spirit mode would have most likely ended by then. Killing that man wouldn't be easy, not in Han Sen's current state and with the current length of his Super King Spirit. Han Sen flew for a while, but he noticed he was still in Super King Spirit mode. He thought it should have ended far sooner. After 10 seconds elapsed, Super King Spirit mode came to an end, and at this point, Han Sen had just reached the waterfall. "It looks like I can last around 10 seconds after achieving my first open gene lock." The man in black caught up to him with alarming speed. "You almost had me fooled. I knew you could not remain like that forever." The man actually spoke a composed sentence, but the tone was monotonous, and there was a metallic reverb in his voice. He was not a pleasant person to hear talk. "You want to go again?" Han Sen stopped moving and floated motionless in the air. The man's chest had already healed. It was too late for Han Sen to run right now, but he thought bluffing might be the ticket. "Quit your embarrassing attempts at fooling me. I can spy a lie, for I am Yaksha." The man in black then jumped towards Han Sen without hesitation. Crap. Han Sen had no choice but to run, he thought, and so he did, summoning the snake to do its best and blocking his ravenous assaulter. The snake had already been heavily injured, but now it was hit by Yaksha once again. It heaved blood following the blow and fell down into the black waters below. Han Sen quickly returned it in case it actually died. Seeing Yaksha catch up, Han Sen thought, if this wasn't underground, I could just fly away. Somehow, Han Sen believed Yaksha's speed was actually increasing. The man seemed to be faster than he had been before. If Yaksha looked likely to hit Han Sen, he couldn't use Super King Spirit mode to save himself. All he could do was rely on Taya. Han Sen's speed was not as good as Yaksha's, so the man was able to evade Han Sen's attempted strike, spin, and try to grab him by the neck. Han Sen unleashed his strength in a fiery display, propelling himself into the water. But suddenly, an aqua dragon was coming for him from ahead. How could I forget about this thing being here? Han Sen now realized the waterfall in front of him was the one with a chained aqua dragon below it. Unwittingly, he had just served himself up as the dragon's prey. Yaksha froze at the sight, while Han Sen leapt up and dove over the aqua dragon's head to land on its body. Han Sen grabbed it and tried to attack it, but the aqua dragon ignored the human crawling on its back and instead looked ahead at Yaksha. It roared in his direction. "I can't believe you have not died," Yaksha said to the dragon. When the dragon heard his words, it only seemed to be more infuriated. It splashed the water violently, as the clanking of chains echoed loudly through the caverns. "White dragon, I only want that boy's life. Do not get in my way." The dragon roared and threw Han Sen away, but then it attempted to catch Yaksha in its mouth. The dragon's rage put the water in turmoil, which made it a struggle for Han Sen to stay on course. Right now, he was attempting to dive towards the rocks to which the dragon's chains were anchored. The chain was as thick as an arm, and if he slashed it a few more times, it was sure to break. With all his power, Han Sen hit the chain as best he could. "I need to be quick. If Yaksha does end up becoming stronger than the dragon, I'm in for a bad time." Han Sen continued to strike with his sword like a madman. Han Sen slashed it 1,000 times in total, and on the 1,000th strike, a ring in the chain was broken. When the dragon pulled again, the ring shattered. Without waiting, Han Sen swam towards another chain and started the process all over again. There were 6 chains in total, so it seemed as if he would have to break them all. If they hated each other as much as they seemed to, Han Sen could allow the two to duke it out while he made a sneaky getaway. The dragon, after feeling one of its chains break, began to pull harder than ever. Han Sen flailed his sword as maniacally as he could. After much more hard work, the second chain was severed. As Han Sen worked on the 4th chain, the dragon's excitement was going through the roof. It kept on pulling the last 2 chains, but still, it could not free itself. When Han Sen cut the final 2 chains, the dragon roared and leapt out of the water. Its performance was incredible and very intimidating. Han Sen swam up to the surface, and when his head broke through, the entire cavern was rumbling. The fighting between the two had started to make the cave collapse. Yaksha is getting stronger again. Han Sen did not dare to stay and watch the spectacle of their combat. Which of the two won this fight meant little to him. He'd most likely be killed by either one if their attentions weren't currently fixed on each other. And also, if the cave came down on top of him, he wasn't willing to remain and get buried alongside them. So, he took off flying, retracing the route he used when he followed the rabbit in. He heard explosions coming from behind, and they were loud that they made his ears hurt. But after traveling for a while, the noise started to die down, and he began to realize he had gotten lost. There were many different ways to go, and they all looked very similar. He had forgotten exactly which twists and turns he had taken. But then, suddenly, Han Sen saw a white shadow appear. Much to his relief, it was the Red-Eye Rabbit King. Han Sen was made very glad, so he decided to chase after it. This couldn't have been the first time the rabbit had come here, and surely it wouldn't be lost like he was. By following the rabbit, he thought he might have a chance of getting out. The rabbit eventually led him out of the caves, and once again Han Sen found himself in the canyon from before. He had come out a different way than he had gone in, though. But after exiting the cave, Han Sen frowned. Scattered all about were the corpses of countless dead rabbits. Is this Yaksha's doing? Was Yaksha not killed? Han Sen felt as if his presence there had left a dark imprint, and it made him shudder. Fortunately, Han Sen couldn't feel him in the nearby vicinity. It must have left the area, and for that, Han Sen was thankful. Then, as if it was greatly upset, Han Sen saw the white rabbit hopping and skipping between all the murdered rabbits. Feeling bad for the creature, he decided to pick it up. Follow me home, at least you won't have to worry about being killed. Han Sen held the rabbit and left the canyon. He entered the teleporter with the Rubik's Cube in hand. Much to his surprise, he was able to bring it with him. He scanned the computer and tasked his computer with figuring it out for him. It would have been an extremely difficult task for him to do, so it was far easier for him to just allow the computer to sort it out. Not long after, the Rubik's Cube was done. It was an ancient qigong transcribed across the puzzle, and it was called Wedding Dress Skill. The qigong seemed powerful, and there were 10 gene locks to open with it. But it was different from the Dongxuan Sutra, and that there was only one function, and it remained at the same tier no matter how many gene locks were open. There were only 5 known hypergeno arts that could allow the opening of at least 10 gene locks. Those 5 skills did not include the Dongxuan Sutra or the Blood Pulse Sutra either. But now, there was another, and that was called Wedding Dress Skill. It may be a qigong, but this thing is useless to me. Han Sen downloaded the details and removed it from his PC. He then returned to the shelter and hid the Rubik's Cube there. One day, while Han Sen practiced his Dongxuan Sutra, he received a notification that Qin Xuan was looking for him. Han Sen, do you have Taya? Qin Xuan asked seriously. Lu Meng gave it to me. Is that a problem? Han Sen asked. Would you mind selling it to us? Qin Xuan asked. Do you mind telling me why this sword is so special? Han Sen knew this sword was nothing ordinary. Qin Xuan said, this sword just means a lot to us, and it is a secret that pertains to our family. What I can tell you, though, is that it's useless in the hands of others. Han Sen nodded and said, well, if I want to sell it, I'll come looking for you. Han Sen did not mind doing her a favor, but Taya was his primary weapon for the time being, and he needed it to kill creatures. Until he found a better replacement, he had to hold on to it. Let's talk about something else for the time being. I would like you to know I am establishing a training class for the special security team. Would you mind being a tutor? Han Sen was only spending his time practicing the Dongxuan Sutra each day, so squeezing in an hour to do something else would be fine. Han Sen was still a member of the team too. He was still being paid wages, despite not having done anything for the longest time, and being a teacher for newbies might be fun. Qin Xuan was visibly delighted at hearing Han Sen could join. After their discussion on that, they chatted about their lives for a while. When Han Sen entered, there was a teacher performing a lecture on stage. The students were all watching him. Choosing to listen in, Han Sen found himself a seat. He was good at fighting, but he wasn't a master of every combat profession. He understood how valuable it could be to learn and accept wisdom offered by others. This teacher was discussing fist skills. The name of this teacher was Nanggong Han, and he was an age surpasser. He had unlocked 4 of his gene locks, which was rather high. He was an old member of the team and an accomplished teacher from the martial hall. And that was where most teachers came from, the martial hall. Many of them were very elderly, and they had quite the reputation, but this year Han Sen would be a teacher. This made the others feel a little uncomfortable. He was so young, and he was only a squad leader. He did not come from the martial hall, and he did not even have a formal title. They thought the Qin family was trying to weaken the integrity of the martial hall. This was how Nanggong Han viewed matters, as well. Han Sen froze. He did not expect Nanggong Han to ask him to perform something on stage alongside him. Tutor Nanggong, how can I be of service? Han Sen asked as he ascended the stage. Nanggong Han smiled and answered, oh, do not worry, I am going to execute a few basic moves. It is your task to react to them as any other ordinary combatant would. Qin Xuan knew the people from Martial Hall were not fond of Han Sen, but this entire event had been set up by the Qin family. She believed the concerns and moaning of the elders from Martial Hall would simply remain as verbal complaints. She never thought that things would escalate to a full-blown fight. Nanggong's purpose, currently, was to humiliate Han Sen. He presented a facade of friendliness and pretended to consider Han Sen as a colleague before the audience, but there was resentment inside Nanggong Han. And embarrassing Han Sen on stage was his cloak and dagger outlet for this resentment. He could have asked his personal assistant to help with the demonstrations, but he had it out for Han Sen. Nanggong Han had been a surpasser for a few decades, and he had excelled in the technique of shadow punch. With his light element, it was difficult for his enemies to trace the path and velocity of his punches. Han Sen did not know the man, so he had come on stage without any measure of precaution or preparation. The punch seemed ordinary on the surface, but that was just a shadow of its true form. If Han Sen only blocked his shadow, the young pup would take a hit that would make him look like a fool. Qin saw Han Sen move to deflect the shadow and knew things would quickly turn ill. The tutors from Martial Hall saw this too, and they all wore disturbing smiles of delight. Nanggong Han's punches looked very simple, and it didn't seem as if he was using shadow punch at all. What is he doing? How can he expect to teach with such casual moves? A tutor from the Martial Hall said. Everyone thought Nanggong Han was merely afraid of Han Sen and his connections, but Nanggong Han started to look like a man who had been shocked by a disturbing revelation. It was as if something mortifying had happened to him. Despite what everyone thought, Nanggong Han was indeed trying to use Shadow Punch. When Han Sen sought to block the Shadow Fist, Nanggong Han would strike with his other. That was his plan. But when Nanggong Han sought to create the Shadow Fist, something strange occurred. His fist did not work correctly. Nanggong Han's fists had minds of their own, and they wouldn't stop coming towards Han Sen. Nanggong Han was looking at the young man on stage with horror, as if he was the ghost of Christmas past. Understandably, Han Sen was feeling quite different. Han Sen was actually having fun. He was using Bauer's energy flow to draw Nanggong Han's fists to where he wanted them and feign a proper block. But Bauer's energy flow was wild and uncontrollable, even for Han Sen. He had only planned to use it when he truly needed it, but now, the old tutor's fists were coming at him as if the stage was on fire. Still, he had 4 open gene locks, and even that was not enough to withstand the insane suction that suckered him in. Although this trick did not deal damage to his enemies, Han Sen was glad he had this power. It could affect the way others moved, and therefore it was quite the game changer. I thank you for your cooperation. That is exactly how one must defend against incoming attacks. Nanggong Han went on to finish the rest of the lesson, but when it was over, he could hardly recall what he had talked about. When Nanggong Han returned to his friends from Martial Hall, they looked at him with great disdain. They all thought he was a coward. Nanggong Han wished to explain what had occurred, but he could not put it into words. Han Sen had only become a surpasser recently, and there was no way he already had what it took to defeat Nanggong Han. If he told them that Han Sen was controlling his movements, they'd think he was lying. The tutors from Martial Hall continued to stare at Nanggong Han, silently fuming with anger. They believed he had betrayed them. Qin smiled, then asked, "And what about my proposition? Have you considered what to do with it?" "The Taya sword. I'm still using it for now, but I might sell it when I get a better weapon in the future," Han Sen explained. "All right then," Qin said. Han Sen thought this was strange. She was usually never this pushy and inquisitive, so he realized that the sword must mean more to her family than she was letting on. "Can you tell me why this blade is so important to you?" Han Sen asked. "I can tell you, but it's a secret. You cannot tell anyone else. You once asked me about Qin Huaizhen. This blade relates to him." Han Sen had never confirmed that the person he once found frozen beneath the Black Desert was indeed Qin Huaizhen, and he had always wondered why that man had told him to be wary of Han Jingji, and he also wanted to know why the man possessed the Blood Pulse Sutra. In the past, the Qin family was not whole. One half was from the Zhou period, named Ji. The other originated from the Qin period and was named Ying. I come from the Ying, and our lineage hails from the first king. Taya belonged to the first king. Our family also possesses a qigong that requires this sword to be practiced. "What qigong requires this sword for practice?" Han Sen asked. "I can't tell you that," Qin said with a smile. "Taya is rightfully ours, but the existence of sanctuaries was unknown to us back then. At that time, everyone knew about our qigong, they just lacked the correct sword for practice. Only Qin Huaizhen is known to have used Taya for its practice." "Did he succeed in learning the qigong?" Han Sen asked with great curiosity. "I believe he did. And after doing so, he joined the 7th team to be an investigator. He took Taya with him to the sanctuaries, and when he returned, that sword had been broken in 2. The other half was lost to us for the longest time. He told us it was important for us to recover the other half of Taya so that we could practice the qigong. When the Qin family asked the Lante family where they found the sword, they said it was purchased from an interstellar traveler. They had only seen the traveler once. They did not know where he came from, and they had since been unable to identify him. A month passed, and this time wasn't only spent teaching. He also managed to open his 3rd gene lock. His fitness was very high at this point, so Han Sen was able to unlock his 3rd lock rather quickly. By comparison, it'd take the average surpasser almost 2 years to reach this point. After opening the 3rd gene lock, his Dongxuan aura expanded by a considerable amount and also provided him a new function. The 2nd tier allowed him to mask his life force to elude the notice of others. After opening his 3rd gene lock, he could now obscure the 7th sense of others. It was a frightening power for any combatant to face, and this silent disabler was scarier than any destructive power a person could possess. His Dongxuan aura could not only stifle the seventh sense of one individual, it could be cast across an entire area. That meant, if a spirit was outside the effective radius of his Dongxuan aura, they could neither see nor enter that place. So, after hiding his spirit statue, no one could see him or his island. Hansen couldn't help his fast ascension through the ranks, and soon he reached the ranks of the king spirits. Have you heard? A horrible king spirit has arrived here. You never see him until it's too late. He'll draw you into darkness, and then you will be killed. I wonder which king spirit's son it might be. It's been a while since we last saw him, but do you think it might actually be the king? Doesn't the king wield a white light? But I have heard many king spirits have been killed by this new threat. It seems to be another frightening, powerful spirit we must contend with. Who do you think would win in a fight, this spirit or the king? While the spirits discussed this, Hansen drove his island past them and briefly listened in. And as he went, he thought, if Split Space King is indeed a space spirit, I can kill it and nab a few space geno points. If we were to have a self-fight, that would be even better. But Hansen wasn't going out in search of him yet. Hansen only attacked king spirits that were one rank higher than he was, and by the time he was done, he had managed to nab an easy 20 spirit geno points. Coward. If you think you have the balls, go and fight Split Space King. He is nothing. I can kill him with ease, Hansen responded, from the dark that veiled him from their sight. If you think you've got what it takes, no one is stopping you from fighting him. Go over there and prove your worth, the king spirit rebuked. Oh, I will. Deliver a message to him. We will fight in Shenshao, and inform him it will be a self-fight. I will be waiting. And if he is not willing to commit to a self-fight, tell him not to bother showing up, Hansen said, then left. It wasn't long before the news of this challenge spread throughout the entire third spirit base. Every spirit soon heard the words Hansen had spoken, and they were each keen to watch such a fight. Countless spirits went to Shenshao to witness this fight. Split Space, this fight is pointless, a woman said. If I can't beat him, or if I cower away, how in the sanctuaries do you think I can live up to my name? Split Space King said. But you don't know anything about him. You don't know the extent of his powers. It's risky, and if you lose all your space geno points. I am indestructible, have you not learnt that yet? I will crush anything that comes my way with the greatest of ease, Split Space King reaffirmed. The woman wished to say something more, but he stopped her and said, You are just a royal spirit, you do not understand. I can kill him 100 times in the blink of an eye. The woman was only a royal spirit, but she had given birth to Split Space King. It was very sad that he disdained her. He was a wretched son. Hansen set up the fight, but he did not go to Shenshao. He killed 2 more king spirits and left the spirit base. When Split Space King arrived, the spirits were overjoyed and their height reached maximum. But much to their surprise, the shadow spirit that had called for this fight did not appear. The audience waited 2 whole days, and still he did not appear. That king spirit must have bluffed and really is afraid to fight. Of course, we should have seen this coming. Split Space King has split space powers after all. That must be his weakness. I can't believe he lied like this. What a shameful person, he is so embarrassing. Hansen was in the underground shelter's east side, examining a corpse Xu Yu brought back. There was a fist-sized hole in its head, and its brain was gone. You say there are many such corpses up north, all in the same state as this? Hansen asked. Yes, there are, and there are the bodies of other creatures, too. Yaksha must have fled north following their encounter. There were many bodies in such condition, and aside from their missing brains, they were perfectly fine. Some of them were mutant, too. They'd be a good way for the people in his shelter to level up. Hansen saw many dead bodies as he ventured north through Thorn Forest. He masked his presence and went forward with care. After 50 miles of travel, he was still seeing many dead bodies. Suddenly, Hansen's eyes opened wide. Along the thorny vines that wove between the trees, many corpses had been strung up. Upon closer examination, the corpses were all dried like husks. It was a sinister scene, and the most shocking thing for Hansen was their human-like appearance. They weren't random creatures, they were humans with wings. These dried-up angelic beings had wings of varying colors, black, white, and gray. The feathers had mostly fallen from their wings, revealing the skeleton beneath what was once undoubtedly a most beautiful plumage. The bodies of these angels hung from the vines, and in their chests, protruding from where their hearts should have been, were red spikes. 13 angels had been pinned there in total. When they had died, he could not tell. When Moment Queen saw the eyeless angels pinned on the vines, though, her irritation vanished. She looked shocked and exclaimed, Who has established a sacrificial ritual here? Moment Queen looked at Hansen with grave seriousness and shouted, Who did this? I haven't a clue, I just stumbled upon it. Hansen explained the events that led him to the discovery. When Moment Queen heard what he had to say, she looked upon the bodies of the angels. She walked towards the vine they hung from and looked at the earth below. Then she punched a deep hole through the soil. A loud metal noise emanated from beneath the dirt. Moment Queen punched the ground again and started to dig, turning up soil that was dark red. It really is a site of sacrifice. Spirits have spirit stones. When they die, they don't necessarily die. The only spirits that require a sacrificial ritual are those who have failed to ascend to the fourth god's sanctuary. Their spirit stones penetrate their own bodies, killing them. Think of it as a ritual of resurrection. If their bodies are not destroyed, they can use this ritual as a manner of reviving themselves. These beings were the sacrifice, and their life force was wholly sucked dry. They provide their life force to the spirit that requires resurrection, and the more powerful the spirit was, the more life force they'd need. These 13 creatures are wind angels super creatures. Hansen felt a chill run down his spine as he gulped and asked, 13 super creatures. Whatever did this was far stronger than a king spirit. Not even I can tell what manner of spirit would require 13 super creatures for a resurrection. My best guess would be an emperor. They grow from a tree, and of course, any person who has managed to grow such a tree is undoubtedly an emperor. Hansen was shocked, hearing that an emperor was resurrecting another emperor that had failed its ascension to the fourth god's sanctuary. This is where the ritual is prepared. The real place of sacrifice is where the spirit's body lies. It's probably further ahead. Hansen looked in the direction Moment Queen gestured and realized it was the way Yaksha had gone. He frowned and said, "What is Yaksha doing there?" "That's the person you saw in the ding, yes. He was the one who went this way." Moment Queen's face warped into an expression of horror. "We should follow." Moment Queen walked forward in a bit of a rush. Hansen commanded her to stop, not wanting to risk Baoer's life by going after Yaksha. If the ritual did not work, the Emperor will not have been brought back to life. But regardless, his life force is still in play. If its existence continues in this way, it will instead become a spirit orb. If another spirit consumes a spirit orb, they are granted a considerable number of self-geno points. Yaksha came out of a ding and fought a dragon immediately after, you said. He will undoubtedly be in a weakened state, and if we go after him now, we can kill him. Before he consumes the spirit orb he is after, he'll be at his weakest. If we find him, we can kill him and take the orb for ourselves. Hansen thought what she had been saying made sense, and perhaps it would be best to nip this entire mess in its bud before things could get any worse. After crossing a distance of 10 miles, Moment Queen stopped and said, "This is it. It's right in front of us." Hansen stood near Moment Queen and saw a great clump of vines all tangled together to form a sort of wall. It was rather like a wicker basket, except for its strong resemblance to a castle. As they wondered whether or not to enter, something let out a sudden roar. It was so loud, they both felt as if their chests had been delivered a direct punch. They even spilled blood from their mouths. "There is a super creature inside," Moment Queen said, as she wiped the blood from her lips. Hansen, wiping his own blood, saw that Baoer was completely unharmed. She looked in the direction the noise had come from. Hansen wanted to leave. If there was indeed a super creature inside, there was no feasible way they could defeat it. But, before he could turn to leave, something appeared to exit the castle. Without wasting a second, he massed their life forces and moved to hide in the nearby bushes. It was a giant centipede. It looked terribly wounded, and it wasted no time scuttling out and racing off between the trees in panic. Not long after, something else came out of the castle. It was Yaksha. Yaksha looked to be in terrible shape as well. One of his arms had been almost completely severed. Only loose flaps and strings of skin connected it to his shoulder. "God and Dragon King, I'm not done with you yet," Yaksha shouted while holding the arm that looked ready to drop. Then he disappeared. Hansen froze. It was a horrible sight, seeing him in such condition, and he wondered what had occurred. From what he could guess, Yaksha had been set up. Moment Queen frowned and looked at Hansen. She said, "I have heard about the existence of a certain Dragon King before. If it resides inside that castle, we may have a struggle ahead of us. Dragon King is a famous emperor of the third god's sanctuary, and he possesses the power of dragons. Everyone obeys him, and if he failed to reach the fourth god's sanctuary, I can't imagine my chances. They'd be far slimmer, to say the least." "Not even Yaksha could defeat Dragon King. I doubt we'd fare any better," Moment Queen said. Hansen nodded. He didn't want to risk Baoer's life by bringing her inside either. As they turned to leave the area, though, Baoer leapt out of Hansen's arms and rapidly crawled inside the castle. "Baoer, get back here." She didn't heed Hansen's call, but she did turn around and wave at him. This prompted him to follow, despite the sirens in his head. When he caught up with her, she had crawled even further forward. "Don't go in there," Moment Queen shouted. If Hansen died, she did too. There was nothing for her to gain in her master's untimely death. Hansen returned Moment Queen to the Sea of Soul and continued chasing after Baoer. He would have put his foot down and stopped her if Baoer was an ordinary baby, but her appearance obviously hid her true maturity and knowledge. She wouldn't have crawled into the castle like she was if there was nothing of value to be found there. Suddenly, Baoer stopped. She pointed forward, and at which point Hansen decided to pick her up. In front of them, the corpse of a dead creature barred their way. It was a golden tiger of sorts, and its body was wedged into the passage, with its backside facing them. There were no visible wounds, but blood coated the area around it. Did the roar come from this thing? Han Sen summoned his disloyal knight. When disloyal knight saw the body, it emotionlessly approached the corpse and began chomping on the flesh and slurping its blood. If disloyal knight was so interested in eating the creature, then there was a high chance the fallen monster was a super creature. Disloyal knight ate as quickly as little angel had, and it wasn't long before Han Sen could see the front of the tiger. The tiger did not have a head, and he was unsure why it was missing or who had severed it. Shortly after, they came to a big room. In its center there was an altar that had also been formed by the vines of the castle. Upon it lay a man. Dragon-like horns protruded from the man's head, and his body was clad in black-plated armor. Deciding it was time to bring Moment Queen back, he did just that. It's Dragon King's spirit orb. Can we take it? Han Sen asked. Moment Queen inspected it carefully, but came to a disappointing conclusion. No. The Emperor has not been revived, but the body is active. It looks as if it's missing a key ingredient that is necessary to complete the resurrection ritual. His resurrection is only half complete. I still fail to understand how it wasn't a success. See the dragon inside the orb. That is the spirit's soul. He should have been revived, so it is very strange to learn that he is not. The spirit orbs you can take and consume are those that have yet to achieve any such activity. This is far too tricky for us to attempt. Han Sen wished to say something, but Bauer suddenly held up her gourd. Then she aimed it at the dragon orb. Over the course of a single second, the orb was sucked into the gourd. Moment Queen froze, looking at Bauer as if she had just seen a ghost. Han Sen, seeing Bauer take the orb, then turned his attention to the body in case it moved. But then, the strangest thing occurred. The lifeless body withered away, drying up like a long-deceased carcass. Something fell from the Emperor's body after it dried up. Han Sen saw a red jade ring drop to the floor. It had been on the man's finger, but it slipped off when the body withered. He was not interested in jewelry, but he gave it a scan to see if it was significant anyway. It wasn't, to his knowledge, so Han Sen paid it no mind. But when Moment Queen saw the ring, she was shocked. She pretended not to be, though. Han Sen had never heard of the ring before, but she had. The blood ring was something of much renown. Moment Queen tried to think of a way in which she could draw his attention away from the sight. As she contemplated what to do, Han Sen was still observing the body. He fancied taking the king's armor, but after touching it, it started to decompose. Han Sen scanned the corpse repeatedly, unable to fathom how he might walk away from the venture without a reward. Moment Queen, just about managing to contain her excitement, said, "That armor is pretty good, you should check it out. The armor is turning into goop. How is that pretty good? There is one portion of the scales that won't decompose. There is a dragon scale that grows upside down. Even when Dragon King dies, that scale won't decompose. It will absorb his life force and thus be quite precious," Moment Queen explained. When Moment Queen saw Han Sen begin to rummage about the body, she coldly smiled and thought to herself, "Consider this a trade for the ring. If I didn't want this ring so badly, I wouldn't have told you about the scale either." Moment Queen had not lied about the scale's existence, but it was an effective way of buying time for herself. Han Sen, no longer focusing on her, was keen on pillaging the corpse. The prospect of treasure always demanded his attention. She walked around as if pretending to be busy elsewhere, all the while eyeing the ring on the ground. The dragon blood ring was near the altar, and as if she was pretending to examine the altar itself, she inched her way closer to the ring. "It's mine. If the legends are true, perhaps I can use the Emperor's help to get rid of this S-hole for good," Moment Queen thought. As Han Sen plundered the body, she did her best to control her heartbeat and act as normal as possible. "It's mine." Seeing the ring so close, Moment Queen was exuberantly joyous. She believed the ring would aid her in escaping Han Sen's control. Just as her finger touched the ring, a fat little hand reached out to grab it. Moment Queen froze. Bauer looked very curious, holding the ring. Moment Queen's heart pounded in her chest as she watched Bauer hit the floor with the ring in gleeful child play. She wished to snatch it back, but as she showed any interest in the ring, she knew Han Sen would take it away from her for good. Bauer continued to play with it, and Moment Queen hoped she'd soon lose her interest in it. As Bauer swung her arms around, with her fist clenching the ring, it looked as if it'd slip out from her grasp any second. "Bauer, that belongs to the dead. You shouldn't do that." Han Sen was afraid she'd end up eating the ring. Bauer was stronger than anyone he knew, but on a certain level, she was still a baby. He still felt compelled to be as protective as any reasonable parent should. Suddenly, she raised her hand as if to prepare a throw. Moment Queen's glee and excitement immediately returned, and in her heart she started shouting, "Throw it! Yes, throw it!" Bauer's hand raised the ring and stopped. Bauer smiled to Moment Queen like a little demon. She stood up, with the ring firmly in her hands, and ran over to Han Sen. Bauer climbed on top of Han Sen's back and forced the ring on him. Han Sen accepted the ring and smiled at Moment Queen. Moment Queen, after seeing their impish smiles, knew she had been tricked. Moment Queen's mind was an inferno of raging hatred, particularly so when she realized she had been tricked by a baby. Han Sen took the ring. He didn't know what good it would do him, if any, but if Moment Queen wanted it that badly, then he knew he'd be better off with it. He ignored Moment Queen and continued searching. He lifted up the armor and saw a scale that looked like that of a fish. It almost looked like a shell. Brother Dragon, you're very dead, aren't you? That means you won't be needing this, right? Don't worry, Skeletor. I'll make good use of it. You have my word. And who knows, I might make you famous again, Hansen said to the withered husk as he plucked the scale from its bony torso. Perhaps it was because the body was dry, but he had no problems taking the scale. When his fingers felt the scale, it was cool to the touch. The scale was white and semi-transparent. Moment, is this the reverse scale you mentioned? Hansen asked. Yes, Moment Queen coldly answered. Well, if there's nothing else for us here, we should take our leave. Hansen then returned the way he had come and placed the angry Moment Queen back in the Sea of Soul. With Bauer up front, leading the way, the return trip to the shelter did not take long. Resting in his hull, Hansen fiddled with the ring and scale he had retrieved. Moment Queen wanted this thing pretty badly. I wonder what it does exactly. Hansen couldn't discern what made either item special. Well, treasure is treasure, and besides, I've been needing a ring to pull my bow. Hansen then placed the ring on his finger. When he wore it, though, the red of the ring seemed to come alive. It glowed menacingly, and the sound of a roaring dragon boomed through the hall. A light, manifesting in the shape of a dragon, shot out towards Hansen's forehead. The light was wickedly fast, and Hansen was not quick enough to avoid it. Dragon King has returned. A voice rang across the expanse of Hansen's mind. Hansen looked around and suddenly realized his environment had changed. He was inside his own consciousness. Ahead of him was a red lotus, and in its fold something was trying to wiggle its way out. Evil Lotus Queen, you belong to her, and she has marked you. Dragon King's voice roared with sudden anger, and he went on to say, if she is here, I would do best to avoid her. But you are merely a marked subordinate. There is nothing you can do to prevent my rebirth. Dragon King, I think it would be best if you did not leave the lotus. You should go back to your ring. Hansen was not afraid of Dragon King. The Dragon King that sought to invade his mind was not the emperor he once had been. Now, he was only a king spirit. What a fool. Do you think me feeble without a body? I will make a good vessel out of you. I am a dragon. Break, the dragon roared, and then the red lotus burst into flames. Seeing the red lotus get destroyed, Hansen was delightfully happy. He had never lifted the mark that had been stamped on him, in fear of triggering the lotus. Now the Dragon King had removed the lotus stamp on his behalf, he was actually grateful. Dragon King, breaking free from the constraint of the lotus, exclaimed to Hansen, now, I can use you as a vessel, and when I return to the world outside this pitiful mind. Before Dragon King was able to finish his dialogue, the shadow of a holy white light beamed in front of him. Against that, even his draconic powers were no longer intimidating. How? How can your mind be so strong? In front of that shadow, his dragon body was stripped of all its fierceness. It looked weak and frightened by comparison. I told you to return, you brought this upon yourself. Hansen's Super King spirit mind prepared to attack the blood dragon. Dragon King roared and attempted to flee. The figure of a Super King spirit leapt forward and palmed Dragon King, making it wheeze blood. Of course, it wasn't physical blood. It was Dragon King's actual life force, and as it seeped out, Hansen was able to consume and absorb every last morsel of it. Super King Spirit Self, Gene +1. When Hansen heard this, he was delighted. He squeezed the frail dragon repeatedly to gain more and more self-geno points. Dragon King was in utter shock. He was so powerful, but against the spirit that now pounded him, he was helpless. The blood dragon was like a dying lizard, unable to withstand the hits. Escape was impossible for it. I am a true dragon. Dragon King knew he'd be broken for good soon and he'd never return. He had to do whatever he could to ensure his survival. But Hansen wouldn't let him, and in response to Dragon King's proclamation, he made the spirit's draconic body explode with a bright white light. Amidst all the brilliant light, the dragon tried to slip away. You can't just come and go whenever you please. Hansen reached out his hand and grabbed the dragon blood life force. Reaching down to the flailing dragon, Hansen squeezed it tight. Super King Spirit, Self Gene +1. More of the dragon's life force was absorbed, and with it, Hansen's geno points increased again. After squeezing some more, the dragon was beaten. It only had the strength to let out a pitiful scream. Don't kill me. I can give you something wonderful in return for your mercy. Please, just let me live and it is yours. Dragon King begged and pleaded for his life. Okay, then tell me what I can have. This better be good, and if I don't like what I hear, you're dead meat. I am one of Demon Emperor's generals. When he went to the Fourth God Sanctuary, he left me his armor. I can give it to you. Please, just don't kill me. When Demon Emperor entered the Fourth God Sanctuary, not a single sanctuary had been discovered by humans yet. When he was about to enter the Fourth God Sanctuary, his equipment became useless, so he gave all of it to his subordinates. Dragon King received his armor, and when he tried to ascend to the Fourth God Sanctuary, it saved him from certain death. His ascension failed, but he was not killed outright as was expected. Therefore, Dragon King made preparations for a future sacrificial ritual that would allow him to one day be reborn in full. The Dragon Ring was his last resort, but neither method had worked out well for him. He summoned Moment Queen so he could ask for more information regarding Demon Emperor. When she first reached the third god's sanctuary, Demon Emperor had already been in the fourth god's sanctuary for 10,000 years. What she heard were only whispers, murmurs, and rumors regarding the figure, and she never even knew Dragon King was associated with him. Dragon King, do you know someone named Yaksha? He is another subordinate that belongs to Demon Emperor. We were never friendly, and he was always jealous of the armor I was given. Still, he never could beat me, Dragon King told Han Sen without fuss. Did you know that he went to your sacrificial ritual? Han Sen asked. That S-hole must have come from my armor. Little did he know that it was not with me. I foresaw the possibility of something like this occurring, and so I set up a trap. If he sprang it, he should be heavily wounded now, Dragon King explained. You said you were given the armor. What was Yaksha given? He was given a demon seed by Demon Emperor. It takes 100,000 years to grow. The tree that grows, upon maturity, can bear many fruit that provide spirit genes. If low-tier spirits consume one, they can outright open gene locks. It's no wonder Yaksha wanted to kill me, if it took that long. Now Han Sen was understanding Yaksha's motives a whole lot more. Han Sen kept Dragon King in the ring. He planned to leave him there for a while, as he wasn't going to get the spirit's armor just yet. Even if the location he spoke of was true, the armor resided deep within the forest, and venturing there could prove too much, even for him. It was likely he'd encounter a variety of super creatures if he was to go there. Even if he used the underground shelter, there was no guarantee it would work. And Han Sen was now responsible for the lives of everyone else who lived in the shelter, meaning he could not take so many risks. Han Sen recalled he had to battle Split Space King, so he decided to return to the spirit base. I hope he was patient enough to wait all this time, Han Sen said to himself, as he drove the island to where he had proposed that the fight be held. I expected more from the spirit that beckoned me to fight. Split Space King feigned disappointment, but the mocking of his tone was hard to miss. You really want to have a self-fight with me? A voice came from an incoming island, with a handsome spirit atop it. Is the nameless king spirit actually the king? It would appear so. Han Sen started the self-fight. Due to Split Space King being first rank in the entire spirit base, he was able to send him an invitation immediately. I'm afraid this will be my final fight in the third spirit base. No one will dare fight me after what they are about to see. That being said, I'll grant you the opportunity to forfeit before we begin. The spirits that watched all believed Han Sen was trying to bluff his way out of the fight. You're afraid, huh? You should be. Han Sen laughed in response and said, you can go on believing that if it helps. But how about you just cut the crap and try to kill me, like you've been saying over and over? Split Space King swung his hand like a blade that seemed to tear through the fabric of reality, cracks spiderweb through the very space around Han Sen. He really does wield the space element. Although it doesn't actually shatter the dimension, it is quite impressive to see cracks form in the fabric of space itself. Han Sen wanted the genes even more now. But seeing what was occurring around him, Han Sen did not try to fall back. He wanted to see if his Super King spirit could withstand the attack. Even King spirits could not move through the cracks without getting destroyed in a barrage of lacerations. Space powers are too strong. Is there anything out there that can withstand it? Split Space King really is indestructible. Even the king can't beat him. If anything could actually challenge him, I'd wager it is only a spirit that wields the element of time. Split Space King looked on cockily, saying, what a fool, trying to transcend and break through the fracturing of space. Han Sen's body was covered in gruesome gashes, and the red shredding of his being was like the marking of a spiderweb. Split Space King believed the king's body would collapse into a mound of chopped meat if he pushed through a second more, but Han Sen's fist was getting close. It was getting dangerously close. Split Space King's face changed. He wanted to formulate more space tears, but it was too late for him to do anything. Han Sen's raging fist was going to land, and the best he could do was establish a flimsy block. Muscle collided with muscle as bone went up against bone. The spirits, seeing Han Sen's body approach with a glowing fist, watched with rapt intensity as it broke Split Space King's arms and drove itself directly into his smug face. The white light drew together to create an orb of incinerating power, one that destroyed Split Space King's head. The arrogant spirit was sent flying back, crashing into statue in a bloody heap of broken bones and blood. Space King Spirit, Gene +1. Shen Shao was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. No one could believe what their eyes had just witnessed. They could not believe Split Space King had lost to a single punch delivered by the king. I'm going to kill you. Split Space King respawned and did not wait a moment before racing forward to attack Han Sen again. If you could actually break space, only then might I fear you. A kitten could scratch me harder than all this could. Han Sen threw his fist forward once more. Again, many of the dimensional breakings cut Han Sen, but the damage done was only skin deep. No damage was done to his muscles or even his super body. Split Space King was incredibly angry, and that fury spread out into his surroundings, making the area around him look like a broken snow globe. But still, even those attacks would only draw blood. Not a single one of those cracks were enough to truly repel Han Sen and his thirsty fist. Split Space King was powerful, but his body was not built to withstand the likes of Han Sen. During his respawn phase, Han Sen approached the statue, and when Split Space King respawned, there were no dramatics to precede the next killing. Upon each respawn, Hansen was there waiting for his next kill. The statue was like a space geno point dispensing machine, and the only sound to be heard was that of a brief scream being cut short every time. Indeed, no spirit dared make a sound as they watched Split Space King be utterly annihilated each and every time. It was a frightening scene, watching an incredibly powerful king be utterly destroyed like an ant. Indestructible. Every spirit had this word rattling around in their heads. Hansen was incredibly overjoyed, watching his Space King spirit geno point tally increase one by one. Split Space King, before it was all over, became numb. Eventually, he gave up completely. Whenever he respawned, he stood there silently, awaiting death. Oh my spirit, the king is terrifying. What element does he wield? Physical, maybe. But if that is true, can plain physical power even reach such heights? Unless someone has more gene locks open, the king is unbeatable. The king won't be a king much longer. He is sure to become an emperor. This is the sort of spirit that will bring great change to the third god's sanctuary. The king is indestructible. The quiet chattering between the spirits soon turned into a frenzy of praise and fawning, and whenever they looked at the king, their faces fell slack in complete awe and admiration of him. After killing Split Space King 99 times, Hansen's space geno point tally reached 100. He couldn't increase it anymore. I've gone up against many king spirits in my time here, and still, none are able to defeat me. Is this to continue forever? Hansen spoke aloud and put on an expression of disappointment. Then he turned to leave. Only the king can say something like this. And to be honest, he has every right to. The spirits all looked on him in amazement. Hansen did not really mean what he said. His primary goal was to provoke the ire and hatred of the other spirits even more, and perhaps draw out another challenger. Unfortunately, none were willing to. Unexpectedly, the spirits all agreed with his words and deemed them appropriate. It's like the sky, but it is not. It is Asura. As Zero returned, bringing back the meat feast of a hunt to the shelter, she started talking to herself when seeing the dragon scale. Did you say something? Hansen asked Zero to repeat what she had said. Zero pointed to the scale and said, It's like the sky, but it is not. It is Asura. You know what's written on this thing? Hansen's excitement perked. His excitement did not stem from Zero being able to understand the text, though. Zero was a Shura in some way or another. Although he was surprised to learn she was able to read the ancient Shura language, this was not what excited him. What excited him was what Zero had said. He recognized them, as they were the opening lines of the falsified Sky Sutra. Zero took the scale in her hands and started to read, as requested. It's like the sky, but it is not. It is Asura. Hansen was frozen, as 90% of the text was the falsified Sky Sutra. His heart pounded and his head pulsed as if it was going to explode. Hansen could not understand why the falsified Sky Sutra had been written in an ancient Shura language on a dragon scale in the third god's sanctuary. It gave him a headache as he tried to comprehend all the possible implications this revelation conveyed. After Zero finished reading what was written, her hand gleamed with a power. All of a sudden, an invisible force was cast outwards against a nearby pillar with great intensity. Falsified sky powers. Hansen was quickly taken aback. Hansen had seen it many times at this point, so it was easy for him to recognize it. Zero, have you learned this before? Zero shook her head, as if she had done something naughty. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cast it like that. I was just giving it a go. It's okay. You can practice it all you like. That's not what I meant. Hansen realized his reaction might have scared her. So, he gave her the scale and comforted her to the best of his abilities. Hansen's mother told him only members of the Luo family could learn the falsified Sky Sutra, but evidently that was not the case. Zero had only just read it once, and she inadvertently cast it with as much ferocity as Luo Yin. Looking at Zero, Hansen now wore a complicated look that came from his intense interest in her character. When Hansen woke up, he received a package from an AI. Strangely, it did not say from whom it was sent. That's weird. Who sent me this package? Hansen opened the package immediately, not concerned about the remote possibility of something dangerous residing within. The Alliance was able to scan packages anyway. Something will arrive in 3 days. Take it to the shelter and do not allow anyone else to see it. Blind man. Hansen read it out and frowned. Hansen did not recall a person named the Blind Man, but the writing was somewhat familiar. It was someone he had met once before, but his memory of the person's significance was hazy. When Hansen was in the second god sanctuary, a man called Blind Man had given him a book called The Innocent. He only saw him once, and after their encounter, he disappeared and was never seen again. Why he would send a letter and ask him to expect a package in 3 days, Hansen could not tell. Regardless of what was to occur, Hansen decided to wait 3 days and see if anything did indeed come. When that day rolled around, a package showed up at Hansen's door. Strangely, it was delivered to him by an actual person. This person was well cloaked, though, and it was difficult to even discern their gender. The person placed the item in the mailbox and left. Because this item had not been scanned, Hansen brought it to the sanctuary and got Moment Queen to open it for him. If there was something dangerous inside, it was best if she handled it. When the box was opened, nothing bad happened, and on the inside was a miniature purple cauldron. Curiously, though, emblazoned on the cauldron was the symbol of the nine-life cat. Is Blind Man a member of Blood Legion? What meaning could there be to him sending me this cauldron? Han Sen frowned and gave the cauldron a good shake to determine whether or not there was something inside it. No sound was emitted, which told him it was empty. This actually disappointed him. Removing the lid, though, proved his little test wrong, and what was inside gave him quite the shock. Sitting inside the cauldron was a red jewel shaped like a ping-pong ball. It was rather weird in that it had made no sound when he shook the cauldron. How is that possible? Han Sen was really confident in his abilities of perception and being able to sense the presence of something, even if it was out of sight. If there was something inside, he should have been able to detect it. He placed the jewel back in the cauldron and found a place in the shelter to hide it. He didn't really want to help Blind Man, but he was worried about the possibility of the package being associated with some murder or criminal act. Little Han, we have received a report of an injured sacred blood creature. Would you like us to check it out? As Han Sen went off to the east of the shelter, old Huang sought him out. What is it? His fourth gene lock had almost been opened, so he was fancying the idea of a quick kill of a sacred blood creature. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss the next chapter.